We are here at the Hopkinton Public Library to talk with Hopkinton resident Geri Holland. Geri has lived here over 40 years. The library is one of her favorite places because Geri loves to read. Geri worked across the street at Town Hall in her last job as the town clerk. Geri, down the street, was involved with the Senior Center, with the Lisnow Center. You'd see her walking Center Trail every day, or at Dunkin' Donuts, rubbing elbows with a lot of the community. She has known everyone. She's probably given the most hugs to people in town. And she's now at a transitional point, getting ready to move and say goodbye to her home and her community and make a new, take a new part of her journey at this time. So I'm so glad we get to do an interview with her before she packs up her bags. Please join me for this sharing of stories today. Hello, Geri, my friend. It is so good to have this time finally to talk with you in an interview for Meet Your Neighbor. I've been waiting a long time.
I'm happy to be here, Cheryl. You know.
I finally
I do
got
anything
you.
for you. It's fine. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So this is an interview for Meet Your Neighbor, and the idea is for people of our town of Hopkinton to get to know a little bit more about you. And what I know about you, having met you probably 23 years ago in Callela's down the street talking about children's art on exhibit in the town hall. You worked at town hall at the time, and you were very interested and supportive of the arts. I also noticed that when you would walk down the street, people knew your name, and you were the person who probably got Hopkinton to hug one another. You brought a lot of love to this town since I first known you. So I'm happy to do this interview, especially now knowing that you are getting ready to move out of town.
Yes.
You just sold your house, and that's bittersweet to say that Hopkinton will miss you and all your contributions to the town, but also it's a new phase of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I picked you up to bring you, make sure you come today for this interview, and you said you're busy getting ready, moving, packing, and you said, I am a woman of the 50s when you got in the car. What do you mean by that? Why don't we start with that? What is a woman of the 50s?
I think it's like, it's right with World War II going on.
Yeah.
You know, all our dads, you know, I was born in 1950. Mm-hmm. And my dad, you know, from World War II and stuff. And because of that, I think I had so many aunts, not aunts, but uncles. Mm-hmm. And we all helped each other. You know, I grew up in Revere. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my mother's family was a very large family. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of cousins at that time. My dad did not have, he was just a very mother, father, and a sister. Mm-hmm. And I think I think because I'm a middle child, you know, my brother Johnny, and then Paul, and me, and my younger sister. Mm. And my brother Johnny, you know, he's, like I said, he's passed away. Mm-hmm. He was very smart. He loved to read and he just didn't like being around people. Mm. And my brother Paul and I were the middlers, and we were the ones who stepped in. And my sister was always like, my mother would say, hurry up and find your sister quick. Mm.
You always, so I know about you. You've looked after your brother and your sister in particular.
And so I think, though, a lot of that is from my mother's family. Mm. And my dad didn't, he had a very small family, but he came back, he was in...
from the war.
From the war, and my other mother's, my aunts on my mother's side, they came back from the World War II too, and one of them was in shock all the time, and every time I would go to my Nana's, it was a duplex house. I would go, I'll be right back. I'd go down the basement and I'd go, hey, Uncle, how are you doing? Uncle Woodsy.
So
He
he
goes,
probably
I'm okay.
had post-trauma from the war
Yeah.
that was part of your family too. So you had this great big family that you learned from, that I think you were, when you got in the car, you were referring that you learned how to be resourceful from at a hard time right after the war, that you learned from your parents, and you're taking those values with you. I think what you were talking about at the time, and so much more past the 50s too. You have been a neighbor and a helper and a professional to so many here in this town through the decades. I think over 40 years, right? And there's a lot of stories that you hold, and I was hoping we could tap into a few. So I think I mentioned that people know your name in this town since you moved in. You moved from New York, you came here, and you got started working in town hall, right? Many years ago, and you have this way of through time reaching out and helping people and knowing people and loving people, loving your neighbor. I think I've learned from you. Yet also, as I know some of your stories, being fierce and courageous at some points in your life, standing up to bullying, and also being a peacemaker. All these different hats you've worn in your life.
I know, it was funny. It was funny, like they would say even when I was a kid, don't mess with Geri.
Don't mess with Geri.
But I didn't want to hurt anybody, you know?
Right, right. But you found, all right, why don't we go back a little bit, as we were talking before in your early years, that you grew up in Revere, and that sometimes there would be groups, gangs of kids, sometimes fighting, and that there, it was a tough, sometimes it was a tough life after the war, right?
Yeah, in the 8th grade, I did go to a private school, and in high school, my father sent me. And because we're in the 8th grade in Revere, they took everybody to one school. And, down Shirley Avenue, and, we were bused there and the whole thing. And there was, they had groups of people. Some people, some of them were kind of tough at that time. And
probably dealing with hard circumstances, maybe.
Yeah, they were just from a certain part of town that, you didn't mess with them, in other words, all right? But I was always like, I was never, do any harm to them. But one day somebody was messing with somebody, and
somebody close to you, and you were looking after them.
My friends were outside, and I'm like, yeah, that's not good.
So you spoke up to the one who was
I did,
bullying.
And she actually wanted to have a knife fight with me.
Have a what?
A fight with me.
Right.
And I'm in the ladies' room, and she's giving me the rules and what I can be doing. And one of them was that knives were allowed, and I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And but anyway, so the police came. Everybody was outside, and they're all like Geri, and then her group. And the police came. My uncle was the police chief at the time. And what happened was my father had said to me, would you like to go to another school? And I went, yeah, that would be good. I mean, my friends were great, and I still kept my friends. So in the 9th grade, I ended up at a place, was a Catholic school, and I lived there. In the
where
dorm.
you lived there in 9th grade, and you spoke French, right?
French.
Jeanne d'Arc.
Yeah, Jeanne d'Arc. Jeanne d'Arc Academy, and I met a lot of wonderful people, met a lot of rich people that lived on the beach, and it was
You met people from all different kinds of life experience,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And starting in Revere. And I just want to call back to that time that you were dealing with someone bullying somebody you cared about, that you stood up and found a way to deal with them in a peaceful way, even though they wanted to fight. And you found out much later on they had landed in prison, they had a suffering life, right? And you found a way to stand up for that instance of somebody who's coming from a suffering place. And I know you also have a lot of love in your heart, and you have looked after many people you care about, as well as the community. So you were in high school, you were making new friends there, and you, as I remember a story about you, college was not encouraged, right, back in your day, and you went to a school for secretarial skills?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2-year school, Commonwealth Avenue. Lived in a dorm, and it was a great experience for me. I was only, my father, my mother, they started, when we moved to the Pines, I had just turned like 5 years old, and they put me right into first grade. So when I was 16 when I went into my senior year, and I graduated.
Wow.
Just turning 17.
Yeah.
And
so pretty bright, and I think you had said you had the choice of secretarial school or nursing school?
I actually wanted to go to nursing school.
Oh, you did?
But because my father was in the business, you know, he opened a Chinese food restaurant. And I used to do all the paperwork and doing all the stuff. And my father recommended I go to this school, a Chandler School for women. And so that was for 2 years.
For secretarial skills?
We had history and all that stuff, but we also learned how to, take notes real quick
the
and
office
type
work, right?
or whatever. And my roommates, I had 3 roommates, they were all from out of state. It was a great experience for me.
Yes, well, the thing, I remember you saying is that you didn't have a lot of choices for studies after high school, but when I think about your life, you had these amazing jobs that followed up based on the path of your life.
Yeah.
I know that one of them was that you worked as a medical advocate and leader because you were dealing with your own health issues at the time.
Yes, I did have
getting people to be a support group on a very serious illness, right?
Yeah, I did have, when I survived it, and I started a support group, and they basically all died. They all passed
died,
away.
And you were the survivor.
And I said, I can't do this anymore. We went to New York at that point, and I came back, and I got involved in other things, like picking somebody up that they were going to go to college, and you can pick them up at the airport and take them to your house, and then get them to the school.
With really chronic illness, right? You were helping, they had chronic illness and you were helping them out. But I know you were also a leader, and you were in the hospital knew you, right? And you were getting people to take care of themselves.
It's so weird because I was living in Boxborough at the time, and when I had this support group, and every one of them came to this convention that was going on. And I was up in, it was all doctors and nurses. And they asked me if I would be
They invited
part
you
of
to
that.
this convention
to be part of it. And I'm up on the stage with others. And they were, asking me questions, and they thought I was a doctor. And the group that I was working with, many of them did pass away, but they came. And it was at the end, when that convention ended, I got some of the doctors came over to me, and they called me doctor.
Well,
doctor,
you were ahead of your time.
No, they said, doctor, how did you get involved with this, with these people?
Yeah.
And I went like this, come here. I said, I am one of these people.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm doing, this is why I'm doing what I'm
eyes.
doing. And then she went, I am so sorry.
Yeah.
I said, no, that's okay. That's why I'm doing this.
I know that you opened the doors for
I was the survivor, you know. I mean,
getting support
Yeah.
groups going for people with chronic illness at that time. And you had dealt with it yourself, and you knew what people were dealing with, and you spoke as an advocate and a leader for them. And then you went and you were doing other work over down the street in Boston for the Archdiocese. Can you talk a little bit about that, or whatever you want to say?
Yeah, I worked for the Archdiocese of Boston. And I remember there was I have to remember, this was way long time ago. And so we were in the pro-life office. And one of my duties was we had a special telephone if somebody wanted to say that, you know, that they
Like
may
a
have they had an
hotline, was it?
abortion or something. And we were open to that, to sending them if they wanted to speak to a counselor, and that's what we did.
So
And
it's a pro-life organization, yet also offering counseling to those
Yes.
who have gone through.
Yes.
So kind of
Pregnancy help was right across the, you know, we...
having compassion for both sides.
Yes.
Is something that you saw and were a part of the work that the Archdiocese was offering to community, which I imagine was quite a learning experience. And again, someone like you who is a strong person, courageous, and also a peacemaker, able to deal with a job like that. And doing good work on the trail of being Geri Holland. And then you also got married in there, I think a little before all these jobs, right?
Yeah, I was, no.
And you, to your husband, Al,
Yeah.
who you've been married to probably over 40 years now.
Probably more like 50.
Yes, and you have 2 sons and a granddaughter now. And I know you're very family-oriented. While you've done these really monumental jobs out in different communities of people that require a lot of negotiation and peacemaking at times, and supporting different groups of people, and also looking after your family. You came from New York, you married Al. Where'd you meet your husband?
Actually, he was a fraternity. It was my brother Paul went to Bentley, and that's where Al went to school. And they were having an important event going on, and my brother Paul said to me that his friend Joe Mazzoni, I knew Joe, just met him, but his girlfriend lived out of state and wasn't going to be there, but they were going to honor him. And so Joe asked me if I would come and be with him because, you know, everybody was bringing a date. It wasn't really a date for me, but that's how I met Al. Al
kind of a surprise date.
Al
then,
was there.
And
do
you remember what the first thing he said to you was?
He came up to me. He was just trying to be a little bit friendly.
A little bit friendly, maybe like flirting.
No, he just, he kind of, no, I don't think flirting or anything. And so he said to me something about Joe, and I said, yeah, I know Joe's.
Oh, okay, so you do
remember no, they were
first.
fraternity brothers.
Yeah.
So he said to me, maybe sometime we can, you know, go out and have a dinner together or something. And so I said, okay.
Okay, and there you go.
You know.
And Al went on to work as a professor while you were doing your work. You both raised 2 sons who you are very close with, and you have a little granddaughter in your life now.
I have my granddaughter, my 2 sons, and my granddaughter Isla.
Yeah.
She's, you know.
Cool.
Yeah.
How is it to be a grandmother?
it's awesome. I love it. I love it when I see Isla. I mean, they live in Lexington, but you know, when she comes, it's great. I love it. Yeah, she's smart. She wants to do what Nana's doing. She'll come up and draw and paint. You know,
You've taught her art, right?
with the art. Yeah.
And now she is how old?
She's going to be 8 years old. So yeah.
And she has 2 men in her family who are teachers, just like her grandfather was a teacher, and both your sons are teachers also in the school system. So she has a lot of caring men as teachers in her lives, as well as her other family members. In addition to knowing of your work and your commitment to family, I know while you've been in Hopkinton, I was trying to list down, you have been a cornerstone and a touchstone in the work as a volunteer for Senior Center, the Michael Lisnow Center, Serenity House, Faith Church, the Boston Marathon, and working with retired nuns more recently, right?
Yeah.
Why, with all you were doing, why do this volunteer work? What inspired you to get involved in all that work?
I think it's from my upbringing, in a sense, and
which means
because when they came back from World War II, I don't know. I just like I remember my Uncle Woodsy visiting my cousin Janice. It was my mother. She was on the same age as me. My Nana, and if I go to visit my uncle, he was just he couldn't he never really spoke. He would sit and watch TV all day. So I'd go to my Nana's, and I'd go down. It was a duplex house, and I'd go down the basement and go up. And I go, "Hey, Uncle, how are you doing?" He goes, "Okay." And I'd say, "Okay, can I sit with you?" And I just had so much empathy for him.
Yeah, when
he was still in shock.
Happened to him from being in the war. Yeah. And so maybe that lit your fire, like, this is what I know about you. You try to get the most out of life that you can, right? Because you have been through a lot of challenges as well as joys in your life. And when I think of you, you really dug into so many extra kinds of work, as well as your job, as well as digging into your family. You make the most of your time here.
I think because of my brother Johnny.
And Johnny
even all my cousins, we had tons of cousins on my mother's side.
And you lost some of your
my cousin Janice
also,
when she died. Yeah,
they were teaching you about making meaning out of life, the importance of life too. I see we only have 5 minutes left. Can you believe that? And I want to talk about art, because that's how we first met. And what some people might not know about you is that you are an artist, a painter. We used to co-facilitate Women's Art Forum together, where a different woman would come in, talk about their art and their life every month for free. And everybody got to be the teacher, in a way, who was part of that.
It's funny, because I actually studied piano. I was a pianist. And classical. And I loved the piano. And I still remember performing at different, events. Yeah. And I don't know. But I started my, like to draw. And eventually I became an art therapist.
That's right. I forgot about that job. You became an art therapist too.
And what happened was I met somebody when I moved to. Al and I, we were upstate New York for a while, but when I moved to Hopkinton, I met a woman, and she was also an artist, and she said, "Do you give lessons for children?" She wanted her daughter to, and I said, that would be fine. And I did that I had an art room, and I had adults come in, and I was just sharing just trying to encourage them. I mean, I never went to art school or anything.
And you've done that with the Senior Center and at Serenity House. You've brought the gift of art, whether a person thinks they're an artist or not, to tap into that. Why is art important in like 30 seconds?
Okay. I think it's like left and right side of the brain, and it helps you when you're drawing. You start to see differently. You know?
You see life differently, maybe, huh?
Yeah, and I mean, it's
I have a couple more questions.
okay. All right, I know that's a whole story in itself.
Yeah, well, you've given lessons on that, but I don't mean to cut you off, but I see we only have 3 minutes left.
Okay.
And I know you're getting ready to move. There's a lot, you're in transition. There's a lot to think about in the whole of your amazing life. What would you say has been your guiding wisdom that has helped steer you on the course of your life? What is your belief or what's important in life?
I was brought up, you know, as a Catholic.
Yeah.
In the Catholic, and I worked for the Archdiocese of Boston, and I think it's just my faith. I think
having deep faith.
Yeah, it's my faith, and you don't have to believe in God for me to help somebody. You know, I mean, it's just who I am, and I think it's the way I was brought up.
Yeah. Back to that 50s girl.
Yeah, totally.
So what's your wish for your life going forward as you're moving? What's in the next phase of your life? What's your wish for you?
I know. I'm going to be moving out of town as of December, and
what do you wish for?
Well, right now I'm wishing for good health for my husband.
Yeah.
Because he's got some issues, and my family, my granddaughter. I don't know. I'm always open. If I see somebody who needs something, and I'm not going to interfere with their lives, but I have never said, oh, I'm going to do this, and that, and this.
Yeah.
It just, if it occurs, and I feel like maybe that's something I might want to get involved with.
So wait and see, always open.
Yeah.
Which we don't know what waits for us next, but that's been kind of a theme of your life. A lot of interesting doors have opened for you, and you've made a lot happen for others. And the last question is your wish for the world.
My wish for what?
The world.
The world?
Yeah, that's a big one.
I think that forgiving people.
Forgiveness, yeah.
Forgiving and loving and caring. And you don't have to say to a person, I forgive you, but I've done that before, and I go, I forgive you. You know, and really mean it in a sense, because all it does is just aggravating yourself, and you know.
You hold a grudge, right?
Yeah,
if you don't do that work.
It's from my upbringing, and it's from my mother's side. My father's did not really have a large family.